The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. My name is Charlene O'Hanlon. I'm the moderator for today's event, which is called A Day in the Life of a Cross-Platform DevOps-Enabled Team. And we have two really great panelists today who are going to be giving a really interesting webinar presentation. But first, before we get started, I would like to go over just a few housekeeping items. First of all, this webinar is being recorded. So give us about 24 hours after the actual event, and we will have a recording on the DevOps.com website on demand. So if you miss any or all part of the webinar, you'll be able to access it tomorrow. Also, links to the slides and the recording will be made available. So, and then you can also post questions at any time using the GoToWebinar control panel. And near the end of the webinar, we will be asking the questions to today's panelists. Okay, one other housekeeping item that's not on this slide is everybody this afternoon, everybody who attends today's webinar signed up for it will be receiving an email link to a follow-up survey. Both Compuware and XebiaLabs, the sponsors for today's events, they really value the feedback that you will be able to provide to them. They want to maximize the value of what they're working on. So if you could help them out with that, that'd be great. Okay, without any further ado, let me introduce today's panelists. We have Tim Buntel, who's the Vice President of Products for XebiaLabs, and Stephen Kansa, who's Product Manager for Compuware. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Charlene. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Tim Buntel speaking. Really delighted to be with you today on this topic. You know, I know we've shared lots of information in different webinars and have had an opportunity to speak to lots of folks in person at events. And one of the things that I liked about this idea for this topic was we're going to get really practical and sort of talk about the day-to-day. You know, we hear lots of great success stories about the perfect DevOps teams, you know, where everything is right and everything is smooth operation and smooth stacks and smooth things. So what we're going to do today is try to take a little bit of a different twist and look at kind of a little bit more realistic world where we do have this sort of messy mix of things, and we have cross teams and we have cross products, and things don't always go the way you plan. So I'm thrilled with the topic. As Charlene said, you know, feel free to put questions in the panel, and we'll get to them through the course of the Q&A session at the end. So I figured, why don't we start off with a couple of clarifying questions before we get into the sort of day in the life thing. First, you know, I think we tend to make an assumption that, well, DevOps is just the thing that you do, but I'm going to take a moment to point out a couple of reasons why, right? So before you think about how do I make myself successful with DevOps, it's worth thinking about the value and the impact that achieving that DevOps success can have for you. So let's go to the next slide. We were fortunate to have a webinar with Nicole Forsgren from Dora just a couple of weeks ago. That recording's available as well. And she shared some really fantastic information about from the State of DevOps survey from last year. The new one is either out now, it just came out, or coming out really soon. And there's really dramatic evidence that suggests that the high-performing DevOps teams are really having incredible success, both in terms of their kind of agility, reliability of the software, and ultimately bringing value to their customers. So they found in this most recent survey that the highest performing DevOps teams were deploying at a much greater frequency with a lot shorter lead times. So what this tells is a story of value getting to customers faster. Right? So from the moment that your business decides there's value to a customer until that functionality is in your customer's hands, that's all potentially wasteful time. That's loss, because your customers are not being able to take advantage of that benefit that you're giving to them. So by deploying more frequently and shortening that lead time, the ability for your organization to deliver that value to the customer rapidly increases considerably. Then, of course, if you're bringing changes into production and you're bringing value to your customers, you also need to make sure that you're doing that reliably. And that's the other kind of big metric that I was attracted to in that presentation from Nicole was about the reliability, right? So not only are you bringing changes to production, but you can respond quicker when there are failures and in fact just lower the overall failure rate. This means you're freeing up your technical team to be more creative, to be more innovative, to bring more value to your customers, and know that the quality is going to be higher, and if for some reason something goes wrong, which we'll see a little bit later on in the walkthrough, you're able to recover from that really quite easily, roll back changes, and get on with your business. So, you know, clearly there's great evidence out there that says that adopting these kinds of practices are going to really provide significant transformation for your organization. So, if we're talking about high-performing DevOps outcomes, let's go on to the next section here in the next slide. And when we are talking then specifically about cross-platform DevOps-enabled team, what exactly does that mean? So we know what the high performance yields, but what is this notion of a cross-platform DevOps-enabled team specifically? So next slide. In sort of a perfect world, it's all relatively straightforward. You know, the flow of that concept through that value being produced by developers and going through building and testing environments up to release when that benefit gets realized with the users and customers would be relatively straightforward, right? You know, you have a single stack, a single technical stack, you've got a single team working together, they can develop their own workflow, they're on a unified schedule, so dependencies aren't particularly complex. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we hear about DevOps, we're presented it with this very clean picture, right? And there's kind of no explanation of the hidden complexities. But in reality, if you think about the lives of most folks in most enterprise organizations, it looks more like this next slide, where in reality you have a quite complex mix of multiple tech stacks, multiple teams that might be geographically distributed across time zones, certainly across different offices. They operate to different workflows and frequently are on multiple schedules. These are particularly true when you're adopting patterns such as microservices, right? So microservices architecture has been proven to yield great benefit for organizations for scalability, maintainability, and ability to bring value quicker to market. Yet, it really exacerbates this problem of these kind of complex mixed teams. Teams working on one microservice and another microservice might be using completely different technologies. They might be operating on different schedules, and yet all of these parts need to come together at the perfect moment for you to be able to deliver the overall value to your customers. So when we're out there in the real world talking to the organizations that we support, this is the reality that we tend to face, is a world where different teams need to come together and find a single way to organize all of the different technical realities that are present as they're delivering their software. So next slide. So this is kind of, for me, the ultimate representation of that complexity. So if you haven't seen this, do come to XebiaLabs site and check out our periodic table of DevOps. We started this a few years ago as a way to show the complexity of the landscape of tools, just to show kind of the variety there. And it's really taken on a life of its own and continues to grow and change and evolve so rapidly that, to me, this is almost the clearest evidence of that case that I was just saying. If you are in an organization today and you're looking to adopt DevOps best practices to achieve those great results that we saw at the beginning, you're going to have to navigate this really complex environment of different tools and different technologies all working together really perfectly. So I don't want to scare you with that, but it's something to bear in mind. So what we want to do now is sort of let's pivot, and I'll talk a little bit about XebiaLabs and where we fit, and then Compuware, and kind of show you how we're going to wrangle some of this complexity and simplify it and bring it into a way where it's easier for you to manage and allows these teams that are working across different technology stacks to be more successful together. So I'll start with, on the next slide, just kind of a quick explanation of XebiaLabs if you're not familiar with us. So, you know, our solution is really meant to be an overall end-to-end solution for continuous delivery in the enterprise. So we do create a solution that's comprehensive, that goes everywhere from the relatively focused deployment automation piece, moving your applications from environment to environment as they go through the cycles of build and test. XL release, which we're going to see in the demo in just a moment, sitting across the overall process, orchestrating all of the steps in the release by integrating with the many tools that we were just looking at in the periodic table slide. And then for me, one of the things that's most interesting now is how do we sit on top of that overall process and help you figure out how to be better as a DevOps organization. That's why I started with those statistics at the beginning, because it's really important for us to have this notion of DevOps intelligence. It's not sufficient to just do it. You have to understand where are the opportunities for improvement, where am I succeeding, where can I improve things, where can I automate more. And of course, we're delivering this, as I said, across mixed architectures, which is really the point of us talking today. In reality, you're going everywhere from the mainframe to containers to public cloud and everything in between, even within a single application. And we do it by leveraging the existing tools that you already have in your stack, as you'll see when we take a look at the ISPW product that Steve will talk about in just a second. So I'll kind of leave it at that, and let me turn it over to Steve to say a word or two about Compuware, and then we'll get right into having a look at how this all comes together in a real-world scenario.
Thanks, Tim, and I'm very happy to be joining you on this call. I'm a product manager for Compuware. I work on our Topaz product line, and I'm also a product owner for several of our Scrum teams at Compuware. I've been very focused on enabling DevOps capabilities across a number of our different product lines and have a pretty extensive background in application development and Agile across a variety of different technologies. So it's a pleasure to be able to represent Compuware. And Compuware is really a unique vendor in this space. We're purely focused on helping our customers with their mainframe environments and their mainframe investments. Compuware has a wide variety of different technologies that help customers develop, maintain, and manage their mainframe applications. And these applications tend to be in large enterprises, really running the world commerce, world transportation, world banking system. So there's a tremendous responsibility we feel as Compuware to help our customers keep the world economy going. And one of our main goals is to try to remove the complexities, esoteric nature of the mainframe in mainstream legacy application development practices. There was a time when mainframe development was cutting edge, it was best in class, but as technologies changed, the mainframe became siloed, and that nature has meant that the pace of innovation of processes and tools hasn't necessarily evolved to the degree that it has on the distributed platform. So Compuware brings a unique perspective to address this challenge. We offer new technology like our Topaz suite and ISPW that allows mainframe development to be shifted out of the green screen and into Eclipse and web-based interfaces, as well as connecting to leading DevOps tools like XebiaLabs. In today's webcast, we're going to demo how some of the technology can help our customers put together a modern DevOps toolchain. So in this slide, to give you some context in terms of what we're going to be showing, We're going to start off showing a release manager's perspective on how they can gain insight into activities within a release. And then we're going to flip over into more of a developer perspective, how they can use modern Eclipse-based IDE, interact with source control, and drive continuous integration processes that will give them rapid feedback on the quality of their code. And then we're going to go back and talk about how overall you can use technology to get insight into your DevOps release processes and metrics around that. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tim to start off with our demo.
Great, thanks, Steve. So we're just going to flip the screen here. As Steve mentioned, we're going to start with the perspective of a release manager or sort of other person who. I'm going to just check that I have control here of the screen. Yeah, the person who's got responsibility across multiple releases, right? So again, we're talking about the cross-product, cross-team DevOps organization. And in many cases, this is the case. Individuals are not solely focused on a single release or a single process. Instead, we want to understand how it all fits together. So we're starting here in the XebiaLabs XL release product on a screen that we call the release overview. So what we see is a number of releases that are currently underway. So we can see through this middle that there's a sense of the process of completion of the various releases. We can see information about the release date and start date, end date, the duration so far. If we're interested, we can drill down into what's actually happening in the phases of the release. There's a QA phase, a user acceptance phase, a production phase. We can see that while we've finished the QA phase on this release, we're just getting the UAT phase completed. Also for a release manager, it's really important to be able to slice and dice these views of multiple releases, especially if you imagined a case like microservices release, where you have a number of independent releases that might all be related to a project, but they're running independently. So we can search on things like tags, so I could tag multiple releases that are similar, so supporting the same project initiative if they're microservices, or I can sort by keyword. Also have a lot of ability to sort based on different attributes, all active releases, finished releases, and so forth. Get into releases that are flags, only releases that are owned by me, and so forth. This last sorting option here is showing a notion of something called risk. This is another thing that I want to speak on briefly that becomes really important in organizations that are working across multiple releases. We've spoken to release managers who might have dozens or scores of releases happening at the same time, and understanding which of the releases that really require my attention can become quite important. So it's Tuesday morning, I come into the office, and of my 15 releases simultaneously, it's important for me to understand which ones require my attention, which ones are proceeding fine and can be ignored and they're just going to go on their way versus not. So what we've introduced in the XL release product is the notion of a release risk assessment. We look at a number of factors based on our many years of experience in the DevOps space. We look at a number of factors that we've found can suggest of risk release towards its success. These sometimes involve dates, overdue tasks, tasks being repeated or failing, awaiting results, phases needing to be restarted. All of these kinds of attributes can suggest that a release is at some risk. So what we then do is we assess all of those attributes and give every single release a risk score. So you'll see these lozenges going down the side of the screen here. There's a red, yellow, and green. And since we've selected the order by risk here, we're going to bring the most risky release right away to the very top of the stack. This is incredibly helpful for a release manager because I know that I can put all of my attention right on that release before all of the others. Hover over, we'll see we have that risk score of 70. It's on a scale of 1 to 100. So 70 is getting pretty high up there. And I can see a couple of the reasons why this release was assessed as risky. Primarily, it's because it looks like there's a task here that's actually failing. A couple of other things, there's a promotion to QA that's overdue. All of these sort of backup problems arise because of this potential failure. So based on that information as a release manager, really what I want to do is drill into that release to see where's the problem and what can be done to remedy it. So we've now switched back into, let me switch back to a different release here. I'm going to switch to the one that Steve was working on, different release here called Billing Application Update. Since Steve's my developer there, I see that one has this risk. All right, there's something failing. So let's go in and see exactly what the problem is with that release. So we're now in the release view, right? So we're seeing at this point a set of columns that represent the phases of my release. So we have a sprint preparation activities, we have a drop-in test environment, we have a deployment to production. And within each of these phases are a number of tasks. So you can see I've got notifications, I've got creating releases, creating repositories, I've got JIRA tasks where I might be updating tickets or receiving information about changes to JIRA. I've got deployments, I've got Jenkins builds. So this is really the heart of XO release, is creating a model that represents the phases and tasks in my release. You can see here that we did have a failure 15% of the way through the release. So I could go in at this point and have a look right now to where that failure is, and it looks like we had a problem on this particular task. So I'm just going to open that task up, and I can see a little bit more information about it. I can see what the task was meant to do. I can see when it was meant to run, as today. I have the ability to set parameters for the different types of tasks. These are obviously going to vary from task type to task type. And I can even come down here and start to get some of the return values that are coming from the external system. In this case, it was Jenkins, and I can see, all right, there was some sort of an exception during the execution of this Jenkins job. Great. Well, I'm the release manager, so I'm not able to actually go and triage that myself. So what I really want to do is be able to rely on the extended members of my team, right? So we have this cross-functional team that's working on bringing this release together. So I want to be able to rely on them to participate and track. So in this case, that would be Steve. Steve, like most folks in the in his case, he's a big fan of the messaging systems, and chat ops is something that he's been following pretty closely. So he's been set up to receive from his side, and then I'll come back and walk you through how the rest of these elements will fit together in XL release once we get the
Sounds like your audio's cutting out a little bit. I'm not sure quite what's happening there.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in and show you the development perspective around this particular release. So as you can see, during the day, there's lots of different activities. As a developer, I might be assigned across multiple different things, but one thing that is useful to me as a developer is using Slack in a particular channel. I'm able to keep track of what's gone on with this release. So you can see here that I can see the release is created, and I also pick up that same failure in one of the Jenkins jobs. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and get some insight into what's going on. So in this particular project and application, we've set up a functional automation test that runs when code gets up into a higher level environment, and that's part of our release process. So you can see I've run some tests. I did an analysis with Sonar Cube, and unfortunately, it looks like I failed my quality gate. So that code has been kicked back down to me, and I'm going to go in and start investigating that. So what I'm going to go into is Topaz Workbench, and Topaz Workbench is my Eclipse-based IDE that I can perform my tasks as a developer. So as you can see here, I have Topaz Workbench open, and I'm able to see in Topaz Workbench that there was an exception that happened during that run of the functional automated test. So I can see in mainframe parlance that's called an abend, and I am able to drill into that and use our abendate product to see more information about the abend. So I can see that it occurred during execution of a particular program, and that happens to be a program that I worked on, and I get more root cause analysis. So I can see in here that where it happened was within a particular chunk of the code that was processing some sales compensation data. So I can see that I had a problem related to the calculation, and what happened was I got a bad value in there. So I'm able to use Topaz. I can drill into that particular assignment, drill into the code, and I'm able to go into program analysis view. So now I'm looking at that particular paragraph of code, and through our Topaz capabilities, we were able to look at that from a runtime analysis, so I can see the actual execution, what that program did, the modules that it interacted with, the various data sources that it interacted with. So I'm able to get that runtime view, and I'm also able to get a static analysis of that. So this particular code, it looks pretty simple, but as I can see over here, there's multiple different calls out. This particular paragraph happens to be called a lot. You can see that's indicated with the darker coloring here. So there's a lot of passive execution through this. And I'm also able to get a view in terms of the data and understanding how data was moved in and out of that program. So you can see this is a particular data that caused a problem. I'm able to look at the values. You can see that there's multiple different interactions with data, multiple processing here, and I can expand the scope of that analysis. I can start to see additional calls, redefines that was done for that data. And as you can see, this is pretty complex set of code and a lot of data interaction here to calculate this value. So as I'm navigating through the code, this helps me understand this complexity. It makes it much simpler for me. So let's say now I've made the changes to this, and I think I have it working. I want to go through and run through a debug and test this against a fairly simple set of data that I have set up in my debugger. So I'm going to go and kick off my debugger, and it's going to launch off a debug session back on the mainframe and start executing through. So you can see here I'm waiting for this execution to occur, and what will happen is it'll start stepping through my code and processing through values. So it's going to loop through various values, and of course the demo gods have not been helpful for me right here because I'm waiting a little bit. But as that execution occurs, I can run through, I can verify that it has has processed correctly, and I can also move into a unit test perspective. So I'm able to use our total test technology, and I'm able to run through and create unit tests that process a significant amount of more data that tests various error conditions. So this will test through multiple error conditions, processing different types of data. So you can see here I'm processing different employee records through the sales calculation and able to run those. So go ahead and try to kick off the unit tests, and those will run. So you can see here I'm running a set of unit tests, processing that, and you can see I've run through a set of 148 different tests, passing in different data records, and then looking for various assertions and problems that may have occurred in the data. So I've gone through and really made some changes. I've been able to debug that and then run it through a more robust set of unit tests. So having gone through that process, I think I'm in a good state with the changes I made. I'm going to go ahead and promote that up to our higher level staging environment. So I'm doing the coding down in a dev level, and then in the stage level is where my my more robust automated tests will occur. So that's the point where I had failures before. So I'm going to go back in now to XL release, and I'm going to go ahead and restart that phase that had failed before. So fix the issue, click OK. And now this release is going to pick back up and run through the automated tests again. So we're orchestrating this with Jenkins. So you can see I'm running another process through Jenkins. And this will take a little bit of time. And once that's complete, it's going to move on to other tasks. So you can see here in my release workflow, I have a release notification set up and to send out JIRA notifications on the JIRAs that were attached to that release. And then it will move on into promoting that code back up into this higher level stage that's right before production. And that stage is really set up for promoting the final bits and having the business come in and make sure that they're comfortable with the changes before they go into production. And this workflow is completely customizable, both from the XL release and the order that you can prosecute things through your release cycle, and also back in ISPW. You can construct a release workflow in any pattern that makes sense for your business. So you can see I've gone on past, I made it through my quality checks, and now I'm promoting this code up into QA, and ultimately it will deploy, and because this is a cross-platform application, you can see actually I already completed the deployment, and you can see I've deployed out to the staging LPARs. I've deployed to the staging web server, and that's been complete. I've sent off more Slack notifications to notify anyone that's been looking at this release's Slack channel. And now it's at that final stage. So with this, Tim, I'm going to turn it back over to you to talk about how XL release can help understand overall DevOps workflows.
Great. Thanks, Steve. You know, and one thing to point out here with these tasks is, again, in the real world, and especially in these cross-platform, cross-technology teams, we do have a combination of automated and manual tasks. That's a key here where you can see, for example, that we have one task where we're actually going to wait for a manual promotion from a manager or from a team. This is an important value of modeling out a process this way, where you can combine both the automated tasks that we saw happening as a result of the fixes that Steve made, and some of the manual processes, the go, no-go decision meetings that might be required before you move from one environment to another. You might want to actually have human intervention there. So the benefit for these complex cross-product organizations and cross-platform teams is we can really build this model in a way that reflects the reality of our software development process. This release that you're seeing running as well is really just one execution of this template that was designed that represents this overall release process. So I can use this again and again for other releases of the same project or other software releases altogether. So it gives my organization a way to capture our processes in this standard repeatable template that allows us to, balance that automation and manual tasks in a way that gives us consistent results time and time again. If you remember back to the statistics at the beginning that I mentioned, that ability to do more releases more frequently and more repeatable only becomes possible when you have this ability to have the confidence that each time you run through this process, you're going to have the same results and then that you can audit them. A couple of other things to point out from the release manager's perspective. We did see that Steve was receiving his notifications via Slack. Did I lose mouse control? Steve, make sure I've got the control back here. There we go. Nope. Hold on one sec. I'm going to... Nope. There we go. Slack and HipChat obviously are pretty important tools in the life of cross-platform teams today. So XL Release supports notifications, both automated and manual notifications, where we can use variables to send messages to those rooms. This is the way that we could communicate with Steve and the rest of the folks on his team to give them up-to-the-minute information about what's actually happening in the release. We can send real-time notifications. We can send requests for approvals and sign-offs and so forth. Obviously, chat notification is only one way that folks tend to communicate. Email is pretty common as well. So we do support a really rich system of tying email notifications to all of the various kinds of events that typically happen in a release. So when a task begins, when it ends, if there's a failure in a task, when you're waiting for input can become important. So XL Release gives you the ability to customize those email templates and the messages as well as the recipients of them. Even down to the granular level on the tasks, I might be particularly interested in the results of one of these steps. So if I knew that we've had problems in the past where this component was having problems with that build, I might go in. Oh, Steve, I think I need to get the mouse back. There we go. And I might be interested, hey, we've had some problems with that kind of task before. Let me go to one that hasn't run yet. And I might want to watch that task. So in the same way that you might subscribe or watch a page on your wiki, you can do that down to the task level in XL Release. So I can assign myself, or I could assign someone else on my team so that they receive notifications all the way down to this granular task level, right? So what we're really doing is creating a way that we can easily share the responsibilities across the different teams in these kinds of cross-platform operations. Now, if I go back to the release overview, again, I'm that release manager coming in now again, and if I want to see where that failure was before and we had that high risk, now when I go in, you'll see that that risk lozenge has turned green. The release is back on track, thanks to the work that Steve just showed us of fixing that. So that real-time risk analysis is on display here. So I now know as a release manager, okay, I can go on with my day and I don't have to worry about that one being in any jeopardy. Now, kind of a quick point about this notion of DevOps intelligence, right? So we talked about the importance of this at the beginning. We need to be able to know how to improve our process and constantly monitor how are we doing, are we actually shipping better software faster. XL Release pulls all of this data from all of these different sources that we're interacting with and allows you to really get some powerful information about it. We have a release dashboard, which on the individual running release level allows you to see a host of information around the release health and the progress. These tiles can be customized so you can draw information from other sources. We have tiles not only for ISPW but for Jira and ServiceNow, and I can see what Jira tickets were inside of a release and so forth. So a really rich system of reporting for a given running release. But also important is looking at my release process, my DevOps process over time across multiple releases. So we offer a rich set of reports and dashboards to help with those kinds of insights as well and to reveal some of that intelligence. For example, we mentioned at the beginning the importance of automation and manual tasks. So for example, I can look here at the average duration of releases and the percentage of automation in that release, right? The more we can automate our releases, the more we're going to be able to release them more frequently and with a shorter lead time in between. So what I want to be able to do with my reporting is see over time, is my amount of automation increasing and is the subsequent overall release duration going down, right? So all of this kind of information can be exposed through XL Release because we're watching and orchestrating that overall release process. Self-improvement and constant, kind of looking for ways to improve your process, also critical to ongoing success for cross-platform teams. We provide a lot of insight into some potential problem areas. So we can highlight releases that are running long or tasks that are running particularly long or phases, even people who are most involved, to look, do you have bottlenecks in certain phases of your releases or tasks? Or do we need to give Steve some release because he's getting assigned with way too many tasks and we want to make sure that, that his work is spread out pretty evenly, right? So again, not an exhaustive look at all the capabilities of the product here by any stretch of the imagination, but I wanted to really give you the sense of how XL Release can sit on top of one of these complex processes that do entail interactions with multiple products and multiple phases of the release process, and bring that information together in a way that it's repeatable and auditable and provides this sort of insight to allow you to continuously make your process better. Okay, so we're coming up to a quarter of the hour, so Steve, why don't I let you flip back? I think there might be a slide or two left, and then we'll go over for some Q&A. And folks who are on the call, please do feel free to use the questions panel in the GoToWebinar control panel there to drop some questions in for us, and we'll pull from those in the time for the Q&A.
Sure. So thanks, Tim, and it's been a pleasure to give you this brief overview of how Compuware and XebiaLabs can help teams enable cross-platform DevOps tooling. You've seen how our solution can help drive automated processes, which also can help remove organizational silos that can exist across different technologies. You've seen how you can gain visibility and transparency into your CI/CD pipelines and include mainframe activities along with other technologies. These capabilities can have a direct impact on your business. For organizations to compete today, it's critical to be able to have agility in how you're bringing your solutions to market. You need to be able to react quick to changing business conditions. Organizations can't be constrained by legacy practices or siloed organizations. By empowering your team, your people, with the right culture and the right tools, you can help bring about DevOps transformations in your organizations. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A section of this webcast.
Yes, and we have gotten some really great questions in. I do want to remind the audience that if you do have a question for Tim or for Steve, please feel free to go ahead and get it in. There's still a little bit of time, and if whatever questions we don't get to during the webinar, I'm sure that they'll be more than happy to follow up with you post-event. Okay, let's go ahead and get to our first question, which is, let's see, what's going to be the lucky question here? How about, we have a really great one here from Joe, who asks, I believe, Tim, this one is directed for you. Looks like ServiceNow started the dev process. As a developer, what can I expect from ServiceNow in terms of service delivery? What am I getting? A place to open a ticket, a VM spun somewhere?
Yeah. So ServiceNow, obviously, you know, a lot of the organizations that we work with rely on ServiceNow for that kind of you know, operation, right? So controlling the workflow of things that folks need to interact with. From an XL release perspective, interacting with ServiceNow is just one of those tasks that may have to be addressed in the course of a release. So after we receive the information that a build is ready to be promoted to a new environment, XL Release can use our ServiceNow support to create a new ServiceNow ticket, for example, if there's some manual task that someone outside of the release flow has to perform. Likewise, XL Release can update ServiceNow tickets. So if we want to say that XL Release has automatically performed that migration or that deployment, we can go in and mark that ServiceNow ticket complete. So the key point here, though, is that ServiceNow is just one of the many products that would be in that complex cross-platform stack, right? If you think back to the periodic table, you're going to have ServiceNow and other ticketing systems. You're going to have you know, continuous integration servers and automated testing tools and deployment automation tools and provisioning tools and agile requirements. All of these products need to be orchestrated in the process of software release. So XL Release plugs into all of those different solutions and allows you to kind of orchestrate them all together.
Great, awesome. Okay, next question is from Damien, who asks, would you treat both infrastructure and application as artifacts through this pipeline? I think that may have been also when you were doing your presentation, yeah.
Yeah, Steve, you want to try that? Or?
Sure. You can definitely design that as part of your workflow. On the mainframe perspective, ISPW has the capabilities to interact with things like CICS and DB2 and set up whatever structure you want. From a XebiaLabs perspective, Tim, maybe you can talk a little bit about any points, infrastructure points. You guys have integrations with tools.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, there's multiple parts of that. So XL Deploy is one of the XebiaLabs DevOps platform tools that we didn't go into showing today. That's deployment automation and you know, provisioning infrastructure and targeting the infrastructure to which deployments are going to be automated and created is a key part of that product. That all does surface up through what you were seeing here in the release template in XL Release. Those deployments or those interactions with a provisioning tool to set up infrastructure would all be other tasks in this process. Right, so we create this template in XL Release that consists of the phases and tasks that are going to be repeated, and anything having to do with infrastructure would be handled by these other systems or other products as part of that overall workflow.
Okay, all right, great. Our next question is from Volkert, who asks, how do you manage version dependencies that span different platforms? Can we use Semver for this and automate the detection of conflicts, etc.?
Yep. So again, Steve, do you want to talk from the ISPW or the mainframe side, and then I can address it on the Excel side?
Yeah. So from the ISPW perspective, you can set up configurable skeletons, and you can drive different JCL processes to manage any sort of dependencies, any sort of build dependencies, and also you can manage your deployment dependencies across different environments.
Yep. And again, on the XebiaLabs side, this is a little bit more in the realm of the XL Deploy product. So the deployments are really the key parts that get versioned in our DevOps platform. That is automatically handled by XL Deploy, including the ability to use Semver or other conventions for managing those version schemes. The key there in XL Deploy's case is being able to automatically roll back or manage the state of different versions and compare versions to one another. So you didn't see that here in XL Release because it's back on the deployment automation side of XL Deploy. One question that does come up for sort of versioning is around these processes themselves. So in XL Release, the releases, those templates that you saw in the graphical environment in our browser here today, we do have the ability that those can all be represented as a code artifact behind the scenes. So there's an ability to either create the template here using the GUI model in the browser and then export that to, we use a Groovy DSL format, or you could start in that format entirely. You could write the template as code and then execute it and still be able to get the benefit of all of the reporting and release overview and risk things that we saw in the GUI. But the nice thing there is that the template itself, the artifact that defines the release process that gets orchestrated, you can use that as just any other code artifact. So you can keep that in your source control system, and a lot of folks do that as a way to do versions of the actual process too, right? So it's a bit of a higher level piece of that answer.
Okay, great.
So we have a question about Jenkins and ISPW and the links and passing information back and forth, and just to give some more information about that. So ISPW has a set of REST APIs that can be used to connect to various different platforms. That's what we're connecting with XL Release back to ISPW is through REST API calls, and you can also connect Jenkins back with certain REST API calls. We also have a Jenkins plugin that can interact with ISPW to download source, to do things like scans with Sonar Cube, and we have a Jenkins Total Test plugin that can execute tests against code back on the mainframe. So those are the various points that we have integration back with Jenkins.
Yeah, great. Thanks for bringing that up, Steve. Same thing on the XebiaLabs side. Obviously, as a tool that orchestrates all of the different tasks that compose a release, the integration flexibility is really key for us. So likewise, we have a host of plugins for, as I mentioned, many of the common products that you would likely have in your development stack. They're generally based on whatever technology those tools use, so they are generally using published APIs by those vendors. So we mentioned ServiceNow and Jira and Jenkins and all of these other tools, ISPW. XL Release is able to leverage their published APIs for our plugins. So we've done that in the plugins that we provide. But additionally, there are general plugins that can do webhooks or script tasks or a host of other kind of lower level things. So if there is some task that you need to perform that isn't a straight predefined function of one of these external systems, you can absolutely do that as well in your own task. Finally, XL Release does support custom tasks. So if there's some sort of product that's in your stack that for some reason either we don't already support integration with, or through our extensive collection of third-party plugins that are created by our community on our GitHub site, you could always create your own. And again, that could leverage APIs that are published by that tool or other kind of scripting techniques. So out of the box, we tap into the APIs that are provided by many of the popular third-party tools. You can customize and extend those yourself. You can do generic tasks with outside tools, or finally, you could build your own custom task entirely. And we as an organization are happy to help you with that. Many of our customers will request that we help them develop those kinds of integrations too.
Okay, great. Thank you both for answering that question, and thanks, Sherry, for submitting that question. We have about 5 minutes to the top of the hour. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Our next question is from Shaliza, who asks, can we directly push C code from Topaz Workbench to Endeavor so it can compile and link?
So Topaz Workbench, it has a capability, our Topaz Connect offering, that can connect into Endeavor and allow you to perform whatever development tasks, promotional tasks that you need to within Endeavor. Additionally, from a deployment standpoint, we have ISPW deploy capabilities which can integrate with Endeavor and help manage the deployment of code managed by Endeavor out to different environments. So with those capabilities, you're able to kind of wrap pieces of Endeavor in more modern capabilities and manage it through Topaz Workbench and also through ISPW.
All right, great, thank you. Let's see, one more question here. Volkart has another question. He is asking, is there a joint roadmap for improvements?
So we, and Tim, I guess I'll take this first and then you can add on, but Compuware and XebiaLabs are partners, and what we like to do is obviously try to solve DevOps problems for our customers, and we like to directly interact with customers to help develop that roadmap. So our roadmap is not something that we cast in stone and we're going to drive in a direction, you know, regardless of input. We encourage from our customers is to take that input and help drive improvements to the product that make for raving customers. So it's definitely something that we're open for input. We have certain things on the roadmap that we can discuss with customers, and we are open for input into other ideas that we may not have thought of, because ultimately the best ideas come from our customers in helping them achieve their goals in their business.
Yeah, and it's a great segue set up for this last question, because it does touch a bit on the importance of DevOps is always having our eye to the future, right? And what are ways that we can continue as organizations to improve our process? And that's something that helps drive what we look to bring as enhancements to our products at XebiaLabs. So things like container and cloud support, right? So today we have great support for Docker and Kubernetes and other container approaches. I mentioned microservices earlier. That support is going to continue to expand as folks in our customer base and in the real world continue to use those technologies more and more to be successful, right? To do those more frequent releases and shrink the lead time. Other emerging technologies there, things like serverless we see coming down the line, all in line with serving that same purpose of better software delivered faster. So that's something that we use to really drive our direction as well. And then the final thing that I'd end on is that notion of intelligence, right? It's one thing to automate your process, but you really need to understand, are you having an impact? Is the value that you're delivering really making life better for your customers and enhancing the value? So our roadmap continues to focus on this. How can we help you have the information to make your process better so that you can have more value and more impact for your customers?
Excellent. Well, we are just about at the top of the hour, so that will be all the time that we have for the questions. If we did not get to your questions, please know that Tim and Steve both will be receiving a list of all the questions, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to follow up with you offline. Thank you very much for joining us today. Tim and Steve, thank you so much for giving such a great presentation. I'm sure the audience got a lot out of it. And I would like to remind the audience to check DevOps.com for future webinars, and also check the website. In about 24 hours or so, we will have an on-demand version of this webcast. And there will be, the slides will be downloadable as well. Also wanted to quickly remind the audience that you'll be receiving a survey in your email box in a few hours. If you could take the time to fill that out, 6 questions or so, it surely would help Compuware and XebiaLabs both in ensuring that what they're doing is relevant to you. But for now, I would again like to thank Tim and Steve for joining me today. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. This is Charlene O'Hanlon. I'm moderating today's webcast and signing off. Thank you.